Hello, BookTube. I thought I would do something a bit different today, and let's go back to ranking books by authors because I haven't done an author ranking video since October, since I've done like some Victorian authors, and I thought let's bring it back because it's been a while. And I thought I've got a list of authors that I want to do, like Flannery O'Connor, Shirley Jackson, um, Virginia Woolf, or maybe even like F. Scott Fitzgerald or someone like that. But I thought let's start today with George Orwell, an author who I've had a very rocky relationship with. This is, I did for this video reread all of Orwell. We're going to be ranking his 9 books, so pretty much I'm going to include his 6 fiction books and his 3 memoirs, pretty much. And I'm not going to include his essays, even though they're literally the best thing he wrote, or his pamphlets too, which I really do enjoy. But let's start this ranking, and we're going to dramatically start with the dead last, because my least favorite thing Orwell ever wrote is Animal Farm. I've never liked Animal Farm. I don't like the allegory he does. I feel like it's so one note, and I feel like Animal Farm for me really summarizes everything I don't like about Orwell. In fact, he's never been subtle at all. Everything's just so because he never trusted his audience. I feel like at the end of the day, and so everything's very obvious. It's always this one interpretation for, and we'll get to this more in other novels, but it's just so one note and so uncreative for me. I just could not care less about Animal Farm. I feel like Orwell is constantly over my shoulder telling me to be impressed by his writing, and it's just, I've never loved it. I've never liked it. So Animal Farm, it is great because it's so short, but it's literally the worst thing he ever wrote in my opinion. And I know people absolutely adore it, but I would literally rather read anything else by him. And so the second last, my second least favorite Orwell is The Clergyman's Daughter. Now, this is about Dorothy Hare, and she lives like a very sheltered life in poverty, and she's ruled over by her father, and she also has like amnesia or whatever. She experiences a sexual assault attempt, and she then has like a mental breakdown, and then she runs away from her life and becomes homeless, but also works as a school teacher. And the novel just follows her journey as she becomes more liberated as a person, but also faces the harshness and reality of life. That's all I have to say, really. Again, boring plot for Orwell, but I do find it interesting the way he talks about the education system in England. That's really all I have to say about it. It's my least favorite of his proper novels, but it's just mostly forgettable for me. You can see why no one really talks about it anymore. Then next we have 1984. The only reason this isn't dead last with Animal Farm for me is because I think 1984 has a very unique plot for it. Like, I think the idea of 1984 is really interesting, but it's just too much for me. Again, it's like Animal Farm. Orwell is over your shoulder. It is so unsubtle. It gets so uncreative. The characters for me, Orwell cannot write characters to save his life, like literally at all. They're all one note. They're all cardboard cutouts of the ideas Orwell wants to express. Yeah, so we got 1984 in the bottom 3 because it's got a cool idea, but Orwell, I think, just really fumbled it. It is a classic for a reason, and I think you should give it a try still, but it just absolutely does nothing for me. And there's so many better authors from that time period who I think captured what Orwell was trying to do more better for me, at least. But we'll get to that in the next book, because the next one is Keep the Aspirators Flying, right? And this is about Gordon, and he's like, what is he? He's like a poet working in a bookstore. He lives in poverty in like 1930s London. You'll notice how they start to get very repetitive after a while. And he abandoned his like career in advertising to become like an artist, and so he's struggling. He's also has relationships with his girlfriend Rosemary, and they're on the rocks. He also has a friend, Ravelston, I think that's his name is, and he's rich and all that, so he's looking down on Gordon and like, why are you doing this? And Gordon is just, he's trying to embrace the working class lifestyle and all that, but he fails to live without money, and then Rosemary becomes pregnant, and so Gordon gives up his rebellious ways of his artistic life and really just finds another high-paying job and marries Rosemary, and he has to live in the lifestyle that he hated so much, and that's pretty much the novel. Again, what do I think about it? It's a really weak look at capitalism for me. It really is like Orwell tried to be Kafka-esque in this novel and really talk about society and the themes that Kafka would explore so much more interesting. Alienation and isolation from society. I don't know if Orwell ever read Kafka, but if Kafka wrote this novel, it would have been so much better. But yeah, again, it's fine. It's not anything exciting. You can see why no one really talks about this one. But yeah, Orwell trying to be Kafka. That's what I think about that novel. Next we have Burmese Days. This is Orwell's debut, right? And this is about John, who's a timber merchant, right? And he lives in a racist and corrupt society. There's like a whites only club, and he's struggling to maintain his relationships with his non-white friend, who's a doctor and he's Indian, and he's trying to help John from his mental spiral into depression and all that stuff. So there's the doctor, and then there's a local magistrate who's non-white, and they're both trying to enter into the whites only club, right? And the magistrate creates like a fake insurrection. Then there's another member named Elias, and what does he do? He blinds a non-white child just casually, and John tries to stand up and he dispirits the mob and all that stuff. And it turns out that doesn't work because John dies by suicide because of a failed engagement. And the magistrate, the evil person in this book, becomes the first non-white member, and then he just dies, and that's the end of the novel. It's not it's not that good. It's not that exciting for me. For me, it's interesting with Burmese Days because again it was his debut, but it also for me has no moral standings for Orwell. Like there's misogyny, there's racism that happens in this book, and I feel like Orwell does nothing to really challenge anything here, because he can't write characters to save his life. John tries to stand up towards the end, but he's such a weak character, and he's selfish and one-noted. And the only thing I really like about Burmese Days is that this novel is set in Burma, which is British, and it's just a really cool setting. But I feel like the actual plot is just completely forgettable in my opinion. So let's keep going. We've got Coming Up for Air next. George Bowling, and notice how he named a character after himself. That's very Stephen Kingy. But anyway, he works a corporate job in 1930s London, picking up on something. He wins some money and travels back to his hometown because he wants to see this certain fishing pond, right? But when he returns, the pond is turned into a garbage dump. And this novel mostly is about Orwell preaching about how old rural England is ruined by like World War II anxiety and industrialization and capitalism. And it's interesting a bit, really. The plot is so thin, like really, and it just gets so repetitive after a while with the themes. There's also George's wife in the novel, Hilda, and she's written to be, shallow and everything that George hates about the life he lives, and it's just lame. It really is. I don't even know. I just don't like these characters at all, and the way Orwell tries to he just can't write personality in characters to save his life. And it's interesting because this is probably the best novel where he creates characters and then he has a theme that he wants to explore, like a certain type of way of life or society, and he crams them into these characters, and that's all they talk about, and that's their whole personality and thoughts. And I feel like with Coming Up for Air, it is the most egregious example of that. But no one talks about this book, so no one really cares. Next, we have Homage to Cantalina. I can't say its name, Cantalina. And this is the top three now, and you'll notice how they're all three of these non-fiction books. So this is his third and final memoir. And this is about a young Orwell fighting in the Spanish Civil War as a young man in 1936, right? He immediately, once he arrives, joins the Marxist Unification Party and discovers his, not passion, but his interest in socialism. And he develops a lot of his anti-fascist views in that time. Again, it's really interesting. But the novel follows his day-to-day life as a soldier, through the cold, through the boredom, and talking about a lot of mistakes that his friends and soldiers made during the war, which got them killed. And this novel keeps on going through until June of 1937, sorry, where Orwell was shot in the throat and somehow lived. And during that time, when he was recovering, the Marxist Party he was a part of was made illegal by the government, and so him and his wife had to flee to France. And the last two chapters are really interesting in this novel too, because it includes a breakdown about the politics of the war and also of where he was staying, and also the double standards that the communist government and the more anarchistic everyday people face. I just find that really interesting, and how the communism government really just squashed any other movements besides them. It's kind of very much like War and Peace in terms of the ending, how there's two going on at the same time. I thought that was really interesting. Again, really lovely. So we have that one. It's still not a favorite, but it's good. Second, we have my second favorite George Orwell novel is Down and Out in Paris and London. This is his first memoir, and Orwell, for those who don't know, grew up pretty much like lower middle class, pretty much. But as he became a young adult, he was living in poverty. He worked as a bit of an English teacher, and then he ended up working as a low-paid dishwasher in Paris because he moved there. He worked 17 long-hour shifts at like a hotel restaurant, and he makes friends with his neighbor Boris, who's Russian, which is really sweet. And they witness some absolutely wild stuff in this memoir. It's really interesting, and it's just Orwell noticing a lot about humans and how people are just trying to survive. Like all the beggars are just kind of people just trying to survive, and I thought that was really interesting. But Orwell has enough of being poor and living in the squats in Paris, so he moves to London, where he still continues to struggle for a job, and he relies on community support with the Down and Out community, and they rely on public housing and local charities. But Orwell eventually finds a job and pulls himself out of the situation, and it's really solid. I love that Orwell focuses on his reflections on being homeless and being genuinely in poverty, in the way that he reflects on the way he continues to treat people, and the way he takes steps to challenge the social class system that he absolutely hates so much. And then so we Down and Out in Paris is at number 2. Then my favorite Orwell book actually is The Road to Wigan Pier, right? This is his second non-fiction book, and this is split into two parts, right? So the first part of the novel, Orwell was commissioned to write a book about small towns in England and the real industrialization of them, pretty much. And he travels to these small towns in England, documenting the way just people live day to day and the working conditions of the working class in mining small towns, right? And it's pretty bleak, to be honest. He talks about the poor food quality and the really awful working conditions that these people lived with, pretty much like a lot of like mining dust and all that, and just the long hours. And it's really interesting. But also after that, the second part of the novel changes, and it's Orwell making a case for socialism as government, and the way the upper classes should get rid of, and everyone becomes socialist. I find that a really interesting idea. I like how passionate this novel is. This is probably the only Orwell novel that I can really feel a real sense of passion from him, and because I think this traveling really affected the way he looked at class and society post his time in the war. The one thing I will say about the second part, which I don't like as much, is that he really focuses his energy on talking about the morality between socialism and capitalism in a way that I think it would have been more effective if he talked more about the reality, or more like of the economic effects of England moving to a more socialist government, pretty much, than focusing more on capitalism. That's like my only critique, but I feel like it's the most passionate thing he ever wrote. And I just really find it really interesting. And yeah, so that's me ranking all of Orwell's novels. Again, we know number 1 would be his essays. But yeah, let me know what you think of my placements. If Orwell just probably stuck to writing nonfiction, He would have been a more favorite writer in my opinion than he kind of is. But I still appreciate his nonfiction either way, and check out his poetry too, because why not? And so yeah, let me know what you think about my ranking and how would you rank Orwell's novels. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.